Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our WCNFluencer podcast. I'm your host, Christopher McClellan, and today we have the pleasure of visiting with Max Mayblum from Givers. Max, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Goodness, I've looked forward to our visit, and as I mentioned to you just a little bit ago, I really have the privilege of talking to folks like yourself who are making a difference in the lives of caregivers. And I know today we're going to get into a little bit about your caregiving story and your why and learn a whole bunch about givers. But first of all, tell our listeners a little bit about you and your background and uh, and of course your caregiving story.
Sure. Probably like so many people who come on these podcasts and have conversations about caregiving, I come from a personal experience with caregiving. I have been in digital health for most of my career. And during COVID, like so many others, I moved in with my family and I witnessed as my aunt was diagnosed with cancer, my parents really putting a lot of their lives on hold to take care of her. And so during the day, I was building this beautiful telehealth solution that was easy to use and consumer friendly. And at night, I was doing my best to support my parents by finding resources online, looking into benefits, looking at government programs. And what I found was a litany of 404 pages, broken websites, very difficult portals to navigate. And so really saw a big juxtaposition between what we were doing at my previous startup during the day, and then at night, what I was doing for my family. And so I just got so inspired to start something. And I'm excited to have a conversation about what we do at Givers today.
I think if there was any good things that came out of COVID, it really put the caregiving issue to the forefront, and it brought the discussion really more home. Where people could actually see the struggles that caregiving can cause on a family. And then there's folks like yourself who are much more adaptable at technology that can really see the areas where you can make an impact.
Yeah, I think really some of the table stakes that I've seen in digital health and other places hadn't yet been applied to caregiving because for so long before COVID, caregiving was happening in the shadows. It wasn't something we talked about with our family and friends. It wasn't something we thought about our neighbors or our coworkers doing. And so, caregiving wasn't even really something that people had talked about. Many people early on, we had to help them identify themselves as caregivers because they didn't think that way. And then when COVID happened, you're right, it really just highlighted how critical family members are to the entire care ecosystem, especially as many people moved out of long-term care facilities and family members took on that work, or people were avoiding institutionalization or hospitals. Family members were doing the best they can to sort of step in. But the system really broke. It was a paradigm shift for caregivers, and programs, thankfully, have sprung up to support family caregivers as a result. But with all this sort of rapid change that had to come from COVID, there was a lot of sort of chaos and disorganization that we really tried to help sort out for people.
I know my listeners and viewers have heard me say this before, but I've always felt that if caregivers went on strike just for one day and took their care partners either to a home health or a daycare center or urgent care, it would demonstrate how important caregivers are to the American healthcare system because the system would collapse.
Yeah, the stats are very clear. Caregivers, they provide $600 billion worth of care per year of just unpaid time and effort. And then talk about the out-of-pocket costs, $7,000 plus, sometimes $10,000 plus per year. So the amount that they're investing in their family members is in many ways invaluable, but it's very well studied, and it's a big problem and weight on our society that finally some solutions are coming up for.
And I, as I do with all my guests, I have to ask my pat question. I think I know the answer to this, but I still have to ask it. So, Max, have you met anybody that has had caregiving on their bucket list of things to do in life?
I don't think anyone would necessarily put it on the list, but I will say every caregiver that we talk to tends to say that they really value the experience that they've gotten.
Yeah,
And one thing we like to say in our organization is that caregiving itself is not the burden. It's all the other things that surround it. And
right,
so if we can do our best to remove barriers that people have when it comes to getting support, then we can allow them to focus on the care. And I know I've told this story many times, but for me, I know personally with my aunt and watching my family go through it, there was nothing more that my family would rather do than be in the room with her and sit on the
right,
chair next to her bed. That was those were moments that were precious to us. And what we really didn't like doing was when we had to step out of the room and we had to make the phone call or we had to go on Google and find the
right.
thing. And so if we can really sort of alleviate those barriers that people are facing outside the surrounding of caregiving, the actual care itself is something that people really value and enjoy doing.
Very much so. I'm a proponent that there's no greater honor than to be entrusted in the care of somebody else. But it's the systems that could be so frustrating because oftentimes we're thrust into these roles at a moment's notice. It's an untimely accident or an unfortunate diagnosis, and suddenly you're thrust into this, and you often don't know how to access the the services that you need because it's kind of foreign territory, and you're creating a program that's helping people access services.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So what we do is you can think of us sort of two pronged. One is that we hire, support, and pay family caregivers. So there have been programs that have sprung up as a result of COVID and even before COVID in some really innovative states where caregivers who are taking care of a loved one in the home can actually get paid for the work that they're doing and also supported via coaching, training, and just sort of wraparound services to make their lives easier. And so that's what Givers does at its core. One thing that we've offered across the entire country is a totally free tool. It's sort of like a TurboTax. You can go on our
Right.
website, www.joingivers.com, and answer a very quick questionnaire and get a personalized recommendation as to the programs that you're eligible for or that may be able to support you in your local area. So, we've gotten so far that we'll ask you what your zip code is. And we're not just going to say, hey, this is a random program that exists in your state. We'll say, based on your answers, this is the program we think you'll be eligible for. And here's the phone number to dial. And you know what? Not just the phone number, but here's the extension you have to dial when you get on the phone. So it's really about all the red tape and all the hurdles that people are having to jump and make it easier for them.
And that's so important, especially when you're just getting started as a caregiver, because the emotional toll on caregiving is difficult. But trying to find that information, I look at I've been involved in the care conversation for 15, 16 years, a social worker most of my professional career. And the way to access information today is so much easier, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah, that's really was sort of the spirit behind our centralizing every program across the entire country was we've just seen too many websites that are still difficult to navigate and information should be free to access and people need these support services. They're there to support people. We've heard stories in some states where they've launched $1 million budgets to support caregivers and then they can't even allocate the money because people don't hear about the program.
They don't hear
So
about the
a lot of the
program.
time it's about bridging that last mile.
Goodness, bridging that, and that's what we've tried to do on the Whole Care Network is to give folks like yourself a place to where you can tell your story and share your resources because it's the best information and referral. This comes from my old social work days. The best information and referral usually comes from one caregiver to another because a caregiver is not going to give another caregiver a bad referral about a service or an industry. It's mouth to mouth as we like to say.
I completely agree. Most of our growth has been organic as a result of that sort of word of mouth. And, as I saw with my own family, that was the first thing we did, right? We texted friends and we texted family members, hey, you've been there before. I remember when you were taking care of your grandmother or your mother, and who did you use for this? And so those are the recommendations that you're looking for when you're especially in that pinch and you don't have the time and energy to really be focusing on, going to the sixth page of Google to find the right service provider.
And I guess one of the things I wanted to chat with you about is your previous experience in digital health, and then how that has transferred into and I say this word very kindly because I reflect on myself about it, uh, your passion project, because I see givers as your passion project.
Yeah, definitely. I was working at a telehealth company. I was an early employee, and we were building a solution for a chronic condition that really has pretty high barriers to finding specialty care for.
Mhm.
And what the entire spirit of the company was about taking the best doctors and letting people access them from anywhere in a state, even if they're in a corner that's really underserved. And not only were we lowering the barriers, but we were making the experience just much more friendly.
Mhm.
Beautiful design, easy to use reminders and automation and apps and things that you can download, and just sort of make your experience much closer to a Netflix or an Amazon and all these other things where we have liquid expectations, I like to call them, into the
Right.
other places of our lives that haven't really caught up. And so when it came sort of time for my family to step in as a caregiver, as caregivers for my aunt, I just was a little bit shocked and disappointed at what was available to caregivers. And
Right.
unfortunately, it's something that a lot of people don't see until they experience it themselves. But
Exactly.
I got there and I was really in just kind of awe of a broken system. And as I learned more and more about how big this is, it's this really quiet group of 53 million people who are doing this for their loved ones. And slowly we're sort of getting our voice and getting these programs and the support that's deserved. And you're right, it did turn into a passion project. I quit my job. I worked for nearly a year just sort of out of my family's house, trying to get something started here to take the experiences I had with my own family and scale that to an entire country of, how can I make things easier and build better systems. So it has been really a labor of love for me. And I'm so excited and honored that I get to work on it every day.
And it's a feel good project too. And when I your website is so easy to maneuver and filled with a variety of helpful information. But I'm going to piggyback on something we talked about just a little bit ago: finding assistance, finding how caregivers can get paid, because each state is different and each state has different programs, but there are resources out there in each state, and you're pulling those together. And I think that is one of the most important components of
Yeah.
givers.
There's not a single state that has zero support systems.
Yep.
And so there's some states that have very accessible ones and there's others that have less. And that's really where we come in, is just about making it easier and helping people find the care that they need and deserve. And I really do think I agree. It's a passion project that it's a feel good passion project because
Mm-hmm.
it's a win-win-win for every stakeholder that
Mm-hmm.
we touch. Everyone
Mm-hmm.
wins. The
Mm-hmm.
caregiver, of course, wins when they get supported with coaching and expertise and training, and also financial support. The care recipient or the participant wins also because they're getting a caregiver who can show up for them every day, who can focus on doing the job, and who's actually being provided the competence and confidence to do that job. And then
Right.
the state is winning. The state states are spending billions upon billions of dollars on long-term care,
Right.
hospitalizations, institutional settings. And if we can move more of that care into the home and equip family members to do these jobs, we have a system that really benefits everyone who's involved.
Yeah, I think one of the changes over the last few years, even just a little bit prior to COVID, when decision makers started looking at this care issue in a monetary fashion. And then they were able to take their own story, their own caregiving experience, and then relate it to it. And that's when you started to see the government getting a little bit more involved, and like decision makers, and then CEOs of companies who are thinking about their employee benefits, and how they can improve care for not only for their employees, but also they were able to reflect upon it themselves, because caregiving is in every neighborhood, it's in every boardroom, and everybody has a story. And it's the one social issue that brings people together from a diverse backgrounds, because there's no strangers when it comes to caregivers.
Yeah, it's a very uniting issue because it's something that everyone gets to or will experience, whether they're in need of care themselves or they're providing care to a loved one. And so at the end of the day, if we can create systems that bring people together and save the state or the government money, then it's really a win-win. We in the US spend more than any other country on healthcare, yet we don't have seem to have much better outcomes. And part of that sort of ballooning spend is happening in long-term care and support. And so if we can find ways to keep people out of institutional settings and in the home, which is, by the way, what 90% of people want
People want.
anyway, then it really benefits everyone.
Being in the home is really the best if it's all possible. So Max, what would you say a new caregiver who might be watching, who not might, but who will be watching our podcast today?
The first thing I would say is you're not alone. You've got probably friends, family, neighbors, coworkers, other people who are feeling the same way. It's okay to feel stressed. It's okay to feel guilty. It's okay to feel a wide variety of emotions. I saw my family go through basically every single one. So the first thing is you're not alone, not only in just sort of the people that are around you, but also the systems and the support. Companies like Givers are here to help you. The government is building more and more programs to support caregivers. And so I would say really be kind to yourself and take the steps necessary to get the support that you deserve. Recognize that you do deserve support, and what you're doing is indeed work. You know you're doing it for a loved one, but it's still work at the end of the day. And so if we can find you, if you can find the support for yourself, it allows you to last even longer and show up even better for your loved.
Goodness, it's just kind of proof in the pudding here that I'm so fortunate to be able to talk to folks like yourself who have experienced caregiving, saw an issue, and using their talents and skills to help other caregivers. And that's why we need folks like yourself in the care economy who are making a difference. So goodness, Max, we could talk for hours, and I'm sure there's going to be some additional podcasts in our futures. But let all of our listeners and our viewers know how they can get in touch with you and Givers.
Well, the easiest way to find us is at our website, www.joingivers.com. We have a free tool where you can answer a simple set of questions and find personalized support recommendations in your neighborhood. And in some states, we'll actually hire, support, and pay family caregivers. So there's a chance that you may be able to work with us in the future.
And you used my favorite four-letter word, free.
We try to offer everything at no cost to the caregiver. So that's what's great is even if you get hired and supported and paid by us, the entire process is free. We'll help you enroll. We'll help you do all the paperwork, jump all the hoops. At the end of the day, we're really here to give caregivers the support that they need without asking too much of them.
Max, thanks so much for joining me today, and continued success with Givers.
Thanks a lot. Take care.